Good morning, everyone. I hope I'm audible. So, welcome to day 6 of the workshop on research and academic publication and ethics, conducted by Economic Study and Research Center, Department of Economics, Bahona College, in collaboration with IQAC Bahona College, and sponsored by Jorhat Development Authority. Last 5 days have been quite eventful and fruitful. We had learned a lot about various aspects of publication, ethics, and research. So, continuing today, our first session will be on textbook publication, uh, publisher's perspective. For this session, uh, we have with us Alankrita Mahendra ma'am, and she is currently a publishing manager in the higher education and assessment vertical at Cambridge University Press and Assessment India. And she has an 8 years of experience in ELT publishing and 18 years of experience in teaching as lecturer and assistant professor in English and communication skills. She has also headed various departments and chaired board of studies at various autonomous institutions and is quite well versed with the curriculum development. She has authored over 5 English language and communication skill books for Cambridge University Press, and she is experienced in editing and publishing ELT content. She has an MPhil degree, she has done her PGDS, PGDPR, MA in English, and actually she is a BSc in electronics, and she is also an alumnus of CIEFL, EFLU, and University of Hyderabad. She has qualified her NET and taught various undergraduate and postgraduate courses. She is associated with soft skills trainer and content developer with Satyam Computers Private Limited. Right now, she is managing the ELT publishing team for HE&A at CUP, and she plays a key role in the strategic development of ELT publishing plans for both print and digital portfolios, and which is a leading in research commissioning and development in ELT projects in line with the priorities of the business. She also supervises the application and licensing processes for all copyright contents that is carried out in ELT publication. It is a part of her responsibility to coordinate and support teams with legal, finance, and production for successful and timely delivery of projects. She is also responsible for budgeting the projects, monitoring performance against budget, and securing investment approvals for different projects. With this brief introduction for ma'am, today I would like to hand over the session to her so that our participants gain from your vast experience. Ma'am, welcome to the workshop, and we are actually delighted to have you here. And as always, for the participants, kindly keep your microphones and video off while ma'am is presenting so that the presentation can go without any interruption. And if you have any questions, kindly put it in the chat box. We will take it up once ma'am is done with the presentation, or you can raise your hand at the end of the presentation and open your microphones and ask your question yourself. And we will be very soon posting the session code in the chat box, so keep an eye for it. And with this, I hand over the session to Alankrita ma'am. Ma'am, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goswami. And once again, a very good morning to all of us. I'm very happy, as always, to connect with teaching faculty. Since I come from a teaching background myself, it's always a pleasure to be talking to teachers, research scholars, and so on. It takes me back down memory lane. So I'm very happy to have been a part of this group. Initially, when I was asked to speak on this topic, textbook publication, a publisher's perspective, my first thoughts were that we rarely get an opportunity, a forum like this, where we as publishers can connect with universities, with professors, with teachers, potential authors, on a common platform. So to me, it appeared like an opportunity to be able to have this conversation that we always hope that we can have. So I thank the organizers for having created this platform where a publisher and uh, uh, an academic, people could come together on a common platform. So before I actually begin the presentation, just a couple of disclaimers from my end. Now, when I speak from the publisher's end, uh, I'm kind of limited in my scope to the ELT space, because that's the space that I work in, the English language teaching content space. So these days, most of the corporates are highly verticalized. We work in strict verticals. I happen to come from the higher education and assessment vertical. We have three verticals at Cambridge University Press. The former ELT vertical, then we have academic, and we have education. Education deals with school textbooks. The higher education and assessment vertical deals with higher education English textbooks. By English, I mean the current definition of English, which encompasses things like employability, communication skills, soft skills, even entrepreneurship to a certain extent, and so on. So that is the space that I function in. Our academic vertical deals with higher academic textbooks of other subjects like sociology, medicine, law, engineering, and so on, the core domain subjects. The education vertical, as I said, deals with school textbooks of all subjects other than English. Now, that is how the organization is cleaved. So I am very conscious that I'm speaking to an audience which has a multidisciplinary nature. So please pardon me if most of my examples come from my experience with ELT, because that is the scope within which I work. But I hope with the understanding that a whole lot of publishing concepts are common to across subjects, I hope this session gives all of us some food for thought, and I will be very happy to take any questions at the end of the session. Now, with that, let me just begin to share screen. I will just go off video for a while so that our focus remains on the slides. Please let me know if my screen is visible.
Sorry, it is not visible.
It's not. Okay, let me share again. How about now?
Okay,
It's visible, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
okay, it's okay.
So please allow me to go on presentation mode. Right. So today's topic is textbook publication, a publisher's perspective. So without any delay, let's plunge into the presentation. Now, I just have a couple of slides on where I come from, Cambridge University Press. Currently, we are called Cambridge University Press and Assessment India Private Limited. Now, we earlier had two wings. We were press and assessment, but we have integrated as a single organization sometime in April 2022. That is just about 4 months ago. So now when we approach universities and colleges with publishing opportunities, we go with a learning solution approach, a complete approach, which includes learning as well as assessment. So that is the end-to-end kind of approach that we are taking these days. So we are basically a 490-year-old organization. We are the press connected to Cambridge University, United Kingdom. And having been associated for so long with teaching, learning, and pedagogy, there is a lot of research that has happened at Cambridge University that has fed into our products and continues to do so. So there is a constant research team out there in Cambridge which keeps studying the impact of the teaching and learning content that we put out. And then the learnings from that are fed back into the content. So that is what gives us this leading presence in the publishing world. We operate in multiple countries across the world. We have a presence in terms of sales in around 80 countries, and we have offices in about between 25 and 30 countries currently, and that number is a dynamic one. In India, Cambridge has been present for more than 2 decades. And we are one of the very few countries where we not only sell what Cambridge publishes, but we also have in-house publishing, because they have recognized that India as a country has slightly differing needs. So they have given us the freedom, and they have the confidence that we can keep to their quality parameters and publish in-house content for our own universities and schools. So as I said, we are a part of the University of Cambridge, and we work with, in 3 verticals. The ELT vertical, which is currently being referred to as the HENA, Higher Education and Assessment vertical. Then we have the academic publishing, and we also have the education vertical. And increasingly, like all other publishing houses, we are also moving from print to blended to digital. So you will find a whole range, a whole portfolio of products, ranging from just print products with online components, and also increasingly a number of digital products like apps and AI-enabled learning content that we are publishing. So right through my presentation, I have tried to bring in the other elements of publishing and not just stick to print alone. So here I've just listed the kind of publishing that we do, so that when I'm talking about the processes are seen in light of the kind of publishing that we do. We publish ESP titles, English for Specific Purposes, for professional courses. Then we have communication skills-based books, then literary anthologies, of course, then multi-skill anthologies. We do teacher resources. Cambridge stands out for the number of teacher resources that we provide with each of our student resources. And then we are also known for grammar books. Raymond Murphy has been our author for several decades now, and he's probably the best-selling grammar author anywhere in the world. Then we have workbooks, we have bilinguals. We have also ventured into other languages where required. In markets like India, we have done a few bilinguals. And we are also increasingly publishing ebooks, enhanced ebooks, and also applications. So that is the wide range of publishing that we do. And in terms of markets, we cater right from the large state universities in India to private universities to autonomous college setups. We also sell in trade. We are increasing our footprint in the skill development space. We are working with a number of sector skill councils under the National Skill Development Corporation, NSDC, and we are publishing content for skilling students who have dropped out of formal education. So that's again something that we are very proud of. We also work on multiple government projects where there are initiatives for skilling teachers and students alike. And we also have a small footprint in corporate training. And employability is one of our key focus areas right now. So this is just a glimpse of the kind of books that we do. I've just placed a few random covers. We have a few hundred such titles that we have published over the last 20 years. So with this, we come into the core part of the presentation. So let's see what publishing textbooks is like. Now, I had a choice when I was preparing for this presentation to either take a very theory oriented approach where I just talk about my perspective as a publisher, or I could walk my audience through the entire textbook publication process. And I very consciously chose the latter because theorizing might give me the satisfaction of having shared a whole lot of insights. But then a walkthrough, I thought, will give me the opportunity to provide some practical insights into the process, and also for those of our audience members who are looking at publishing at some point, or authoring content, or simply creating freelance content, or reviewing content. Now, this will give some perspective on how to approach publishers and what are the things to keep in mind when you are authoring or reviewing content. So with that, I took a conscious decision to take the process approach. And I hope that this works and you find it useful. I would like to know at the end of the session. Publishing textbooks is a collaborative process, and it involves a large team. We have authors, reviewers, editors, typesetters, page layout designers, cover designers, audio and video vendors. And now with digital content, we also have instructional designers, storyboard specialists, digital vendors, production teams, and at the end of the process, printers, and then come in the sales and marketing people. So you can see what an enormous effort goes into that little book that comes into your hands. So there's a whole army of people with different capacities and capabilities who are working behind the scenes to bring that book into our hands. And this is the magical world that I'm going to take us all into. So let's just start with the whole process. How a book, and when I'm talking about books here, I'm largely talking about textbooks, although we also do a few trade titles. And by trade titles, which is common jargon in publishing, what we mean is a book that is designed by the publisher, by the publishing team, with their understanding of what the market requires. Say, for instance, in 2017, we had a thought process in our communication with salespeople, marketing, and so on. We realized, and also tracking what AICT is doing or what UGC is doing, we thought the market needs a title on soft skills. So we planned and published, we designed the whole curriculum, and then we brought out a book called Soft Skills and Employability Skills. And then we just put it out in the trade market. Now, as we know, footfalls in bookshops now are going down. And for a little while, the book did not take off as we expected. But then now, with the coming of the skill development scene, this book has suddenly found such traction that we are selling. In the last 6 months, we have sold some 40,000 licenses of an ebook version of the same title, where it had sold only in a few hundreds in trade. So increasingly, we are doing a smaller number of trade titles. We largely work with universities where there are definite print runs and definite opportunities, and create textbooks which are custom built to particular syllabi and curricula. So that is the difference between a trade title and a university prescribed textbook. So most of the processes here are connected with the university prescription process. However, at least 75% of the process would be the same for trade. Now, publishing as a process, it is not linear. I will walk us through a kind of flowchart a little later, where I have presented it as a linear process. But then to be able to publish a book within 3-4 months, If we were to go in a linear way, we wouldn't be able to meet our timelines. So it's a multi-pronged approach that we need to have. So the first thing is publishing a textbook is not a linear process. It involves multiple teams. There is the editorial team. There is a product development team which looks at things like commissioning typesetters and cover designers, audio and video vendors, getting the content digitized, hiring storyboarders, instructional designers, and so on. And then we also work with a large number of vendors. Then we have the production team, which actually takes care of printing and stock management. And then, of course, come into play other teams like marketing and sales. Then most publishing houses use both in-house and freelance resources. Now, this is a point that I'm hoping is of interest to the audience, because even if you have not actually authored content for a publisher, you still have scope to approach a publishing house with the suggestion of freelancing with them, because a whole lot of editorial processes, content creation processes are also outsourced to freelancers, because no publishing house can afford to have all the faculty, all the employees that they need in-house. So some competencies are also outsourced, and this is an opportunity that we in teaching can latch on to, and that is exactly how I made my foray into publishing. I started with Cambridge University Press as an author. They had approached me for an authoring opportunity. I authored some 5 books for them, and then I also took up some freelance work with them, freelance editing, freelance reviewing, and so on. And then gradually that helped me transition to the publishing world. So, please, let's be clear that I'm not suggesting that all teachers make this move, but in my case, it just happened to have happened that way. But we can comfortably straddle both the publishing and academic worlds. In fact, the more that happens, the richer the publishing space will be, and also it will contribute to better content for the learners. Then there are a number of creative agencies. You have an army of illustrators, of cover designers who come with a high level of competency these days, who are also part of the whole content creation and publishing process. Now, as I said, I will just show you the publishing process. Ideally, I have created a shorter version of the actual process that we have. It runs into several pages. So I know the print is very small. I will not walk you through the whole process on this slide, because we are going to look at it in the future slides anyways. So this is just to give you an idea from start to finish how the whole publishing process works, right from the receipt of manuscript to reviews to revisions and ISBN application, then the whole IP rights process, then of course the typesetting, and then the proofreading that happens, then designing the cover, writing the blurb, placing barcodes, then all the final checks that happen, the quality assurance checks, till we hand over the files to production, and then production and stocking and transport of the books. So I will not dwell much on this diagram itself. I just wanted to make the point that though it's laid out as a linear process, it is not linear. It's multi-pronged, and multiple things happen at the same time. So if you have students who wish to enter publishing as an industry, then it can be quite a challenging job, and also very satisfying, because at the end of the day, you get to see your work in a physical form, in the form of a book. So let's start from the beginning of the process. Every book starts as a blank Microsoft Word document. That is where the journey of a book begins, as a blank MS Word document on some author's laptop. So what are the kinds of authoring opportunities that most publishing houses offer? First is commissioning of independent authors. A publishing house might approach people who they think have the academic credentials and also the ability to produce content, and directly commission them either on a royalty basis or on a one-time fee basis. Now, I'll also discuss a little bit about these two options. What are the differences, and what should people be preferring, whether it is one over the other at all. So that is one kind of authoring opportunity where a publishing house itself approaches you as an academician and commissions you. The second option, this happens mostly in the case of textbook publication. We commission an author or a set of authors suggested by the university. It might be a single author, it might be two authors, or it might be a set of board of editors that we commission on the university's suggestion. So we have an agreement with the university where the university sets up a board that will author the textbook, and they also, if needed, they designate one of them as a point of contact and designate that person as the chief editor, and then we commission the authors directly. And there are even cases where we commission the authors only via the university. That means we only have an agreement with the university. The university in turn contracts the authors. So that is another possibility. They can be a combination of both. Now, some universities might say, we can provide you with one author, but we suggest that you bring in another author. Say we don't have ELT capacities, we only have people with a literature background. So we will provide you with one author. You can commission another author from outside, and we can go on a royalty share. So it can be a combination of one and two. Then the third kind of opportunity, and this is increasingly made available in the digital content space, where you have freelance content developers who work on a one-time fee basis. In this case, the content developer might or might not be acknowledged as the author of the content. It depends on the nature of the contract signed. Now, if the content developer comes with high academic credentials, and if it is felt that their association with the product might help sell it, then we might offer an acknowledgement somewhere within the digital content that so-and-so is the author. In some cases, there are a lot of freelance content developers these days who do not care for their name being reflected on the product, but they are happy to provide the content. So that is the third kind of content opportunity that we have. Then the fourth one, it's becoming rarer and rarer now, where the authors themselves come up with a proposal. We often get emails from authors saying, I have a manuscript which I have part developed or I have fully developed. I am interested in publishing it with your publishing house. Now, in this case, what this makes the final decision is the marketability of the product. So it's not that we don't seek proposals. We do have a format which we share, in which you place your proposal, you share some sample content, we get it peer reviewed, and then we also do a kind of market dipstick survey to see whether the product has saleability value, and then we might take it up if the product really is in line with our publishing plans, because in publishing we have yearly and 3-year publishing plans. So if your product is aligned with our publishing plans for that period, then, and also there is some saleability that we see, we might take up the author proposal and publish a book. And there are even cases where a book started its life as an author proposal, but then later it found some prescription opportunity in a university, and it became a university textbook. But those are rare cases. However, we do not rule that out. So these are the kinds of authoring opportunities. I hope you find this information useful. Now, the two questions, the top question in a person's mind when he or she is being commissioned is, do I go on royalty or do I go on a one-time fee? Now, let me be very honest. As a publishing house, it helps us if people go on a royalty in, in one way, and it helps us if people go on a one-time fee basis in another way. And this has to be decided on a case-to-case basis. Now, what are the advantages for a publisher if the author is on royalty? The risk gets shared. Now, the royalty is paid only on the number of copies that are sold. So if we are unsure how many copies are going to be selling, then a royalty is what a publisher is likely to offer you. And it's up to you to take a very informed decision there, whether it works for you. So a royalty would be a percentage. It could be anywhere between, say, 2 to 3% per author in a multi-author case to about 10 to 12% for a single author case. Now, every year, the accounting is done at the end of the financial year as to how many copies have sold. And there is a list price that is agreed right at the beginning. And based on that, the royalties are calculated. And very in a very transparent manner, there is a author hub where everything, all the statements of accounts are put up in your name, and your royalties are transferred to your bank account at the end of the fiscal year. Now, that is one option. The other option is one-time fee. Now, in the case of one-time fee, from the publisher's perspective, they have to park the entire budget in 1 year, because the minute the content changes hands, the minute the content is received by the publishing house and it's edited and finalized for publishing, then the one-time fee payment has to be made. So the entire stress comes into one financial year. But then the benefit from the client's end is, from the publisher's end is, that once you pay off for the content, then you can reuse it any number of times, because the copyright of the content shifts to the publisher. Whereas in the case of royalty, if I have to republish the content in some other book, then I have to pay the author a smaller proportion of the original royalty for reuse of content. And we have to keep going back and signing addenda with the content developer for every reuse of the content. So that is the difference between royalty and a one-time fee. Cambridge is increasingly pushing for moving to a one-time fee model, because these days products see a lot of iterations, and especially in the digital space. So they would like to pay off for the content and then reuse the content in multiple formats. Now, from the author's point of view, I'm switching roles here because I've been an author myself. So I'm on your side of the fence now. I would think very carefully whether I go for a royalty option or a one-time fee option. Royalty, I would consider if it were a prescription title where I'm sure that the syllabus is going to run for a set number of years, generally 3 years or 5 years. And I know, though the print runs will taper because there will be second-hand books in the market, I will at least be assured of some sales. Say if the first year we are printing 20,000 copies, the next year it might come down to 15,000, the third year it might come down to 12,000. But at least I'm assured that a set number of books is going to sell, and I will continue to get my royalty. If it is not a prescription title, if it's a trade title or just a digital product that the publisher is putting out with the hope that it will do well, it will sell well, then I, as a content developer, would prefer a one-time fee and make sure I get a considerably high fee in right at the time of content creation, so that the risk is the publisher's, and whether the product continues to sell or not, I will have been paid for my effort and labor. So that is the difference between royalty and one-time fee options. Now we go back to that blank Microsoft Word document where our manuscript is going to take birth. So what do we insist on as a reputed publishing house? The first thing I would insist on as a publishing manager is that the manuscript be entirely original. Now, this is easier said than done. But by original manuscript, do I mean that we do not quote anything, that we do not borrow anything from any source? Absolutely not. Especially coming from an ELT background, I can vouch for the value of authentic content. Now, what do I mean by authentic content? If I'm publishing a book on, say, communication skills, I would like to have reading material from various sources like magazines, newspapers, blogs, web pages, and so on. So that material will go into my functional reading within my book. Now, carrying that does not mean my manuscript is not original. It only means that when I'm using something from a source, I acknowledge the source. I provide that information to the publisher so that the publisher can apply for rights. Now, this application for IP rights, if the IP rights of the final content are going to rest with the publisher has to pursue the matter with the IP rights owners and seek copyright permission. In some cases, mostly that happens with our academic vertical, the author chooses to retain the rights to the content after the book is published. In that case, this happens mostly with well-known authors. Now, in that case, the author's responsibility to make sure that all sources are acknowledged is higher. The author has to approach the copyright holders, make the necessary payments, and sign the required licenses for use of the material. I will take us into a little more detail about how the IP rights scene works a little later. So by original manuscript, we mean original, but with sources of content used acknowledged. So that's the second point. And then what we do is when we are working on a manuscript, we first source a sample unit or two, and also a document which kind of outlines the structure of the planned book so that we can see the sample content vis-a-vis the overall structure and see whether it works. And there's another reason we seek sample units. This is for review purpose. It's double reviewed. All sample manuscripts are double reviewed, first by the editorial board, that is in-house, and then by a peer reviewer whom we commission to review the content on a blind basis. So these are blind peer reviews. And only after the review reports are received and everything is found in order that we confirm that we are going ahead with the publishing proposal. Then the next thing to do, once the sample content is in place and we are happy with it, or if there are some changes to be made, we go back to the author revises the sample and then resubmits. Once that is finalized, then the length of the book and its complexity level are determined. This is mainly done for financial reasons because we need to work out a budget for the project and seek internal approvals. All our investments come from Cambridge, so we need to seek internal approvals for the project budgets. And this, I'm sure, is a standard process followed by all publishing houses, whether they are multinational or India-based. They have to seek, the publishing team has to seek an investment from the finance department. So for that is where the length matters. And since most books are published in on paper, that comes in forms. Now, one form of paper is 16 pages. So generally, when we determine the page count of a book, it is in multiples of 16 in an ideal situation. But since that becomes difficult, sometimes you don't have matter enough to stretch it to 16 pages at the end, or you overshoot the particular form by 3-4 pages. Therefore, we also have the option of going with multiples of 8 pages. 8 pages is referred to as half form. So your page extent can be a multiple of 8 or a multiple of 16. If it's a multiple of 16, there's no wastage because paper has to be purchased in forms. If it's a multiple of 8, the publisher ends up paying for 8 extra pages to the printers, which go waste. But that's okay. Those costs are absorbed within the pricing. Then, as I said, we have a peer as well as editorial review. In some cases where it's a very simple manuscript, there's only an editorial review. But for most complex manuscripts, there is both a peer review as well as an editorial review. The peers can be professors from other universities. We consciously choose people from not from within the region, but from outside the region. In the case of our academic vertical, they also have a mandate to go to one international name and one Indian reviewer. So if they go with double peer review, one of whom is definitely an international name. So their publishing is much more rigorous than ours. Then what is the review process like? This is a process that is taken very seriously by us in Cambridge. It's a blind review by a subject matter expert. We try and locate people who work within the same specialization as the manuscript comes from, so that the review is an informed review. And we also have a review format in which the reviewer gives the feedback. And where appropriate, the feedback is also shared. If it's a positive review, if it's completely positive, there's nothing to be shared back with the author. Other than that, your review has been clear and there's no cause for concern. But if there is some negative feedback or suggestions for improvement, then we share those portions back with the author and get the manuscript revised. Then what does the editorial review do? The editorial review will look for gaps, inconsistencies, and majorly copyright concerns. There are times when authors do quote the sources, but in some cases the authors don't. And this happens not because the authors have something to hide, but simply because many authors do not know the implications of not quoting a source. To give you a very simple example, we have a lot of visuals that we carry in our manuscripts, and sometimes the authors themselves feel compelled to source the visuals themselves, and they go to sites which are known as Creative Commons, and they just download images from there and place them within the manuscript with the very honest understanding that because the site says that this comes under the Creative Commons license, it's available for free. But what they do not understand is this is available for free to you as a teacher, as a researcher, to be able to use it in your, maybe in your classroom or in your presentation slides, but not to us as commercial publishers who are going to be making business out of the product. It does not come free for us. That is written in small print. If you read the Creative Commons license, license documents generally are very cumbersome to read. But if you do read the small print, you will find that it is not free for the publisher to use. This is something that I face with almost every single author that I work with, because teachers come with this understanding that if something is available free on the net, it is free even for a publisher to use in a book, which is not the case. So I hope this interaction in some way helps us dispel that myth. So the editors make a spreadsheet where they list out all the instances where there are copyright concerns, so that we can either avoid some of those and see if we can drop them, and where possible, we apply for copyright, sign the license, and then pay the rights holder and use the content. Carry it with a proper acknowledgement on the acknowledgement page. And in terms of acknowledgement, generally when we get the license to which is to be countersigned by us, there is a clear credit line that is given by the publisher that needs to be copied on as is onto the acknowledgements page. So most of the publishing houses do have a standard credit line. Now, in some cases, they don't have a specific line, but still we confirm whether they do have one before we compose the line ourselves and carry it. And in the case of translations, say I'm carrying a poem that's been translated from, say, Kashmiri, or it's been translated from Spanish, then I will have to apply to both the original poet and also the translator, and sign agreements with both of them, and also pay, where required, both of them. In some cases, if it's for use in educational books, some authors are good enough to say that, since it's for the benefit of a large student body, we would not like to charge any fee. So this is o gratis. So there are a few such instances where we get the permission for free. There are times when the translator might say, don't want to charge you for the translation. But however, the process has to be followed. When the review report is shared with the authors, or at least the main portions which deal with improvements is shared, and then thorough revisions are requested. Now, despite following all this rigorous procedure, we still deal with a whole lot of plagiarism. I'm sure, being in the academic world, all of us are familiar with the kind of concerns that we have. And I'm sure a lot of you teachers are also dealing with this when you have students turning in their assignments, where you see that they have directly lifted from some internet source. So how do we deal with this? Right at the outset, when we get the manuscript, we do a complete plagiarism check using a software called Authenticate. Then the report is shared back. If it shows major concerns, it's even shared back. The similarity report is shared back with the author. So there are times when the plagiarism has happened simply because the author is unaware of the pitfalls of plagiarism. But people who have done their research, mostly, the expectation is that if you have done your doctorate or your MPhil or whatever, then you should already be aware. In fact, a whole lot of master's courses now also insist on term papers and so on. So by then, the students would have learned the ethics of writing research papers, of writing journal papers, and so on. So the hope of always is that we do not find any plagiarism concerns, but the reality is lies somewhere else. So what we do is we red flag some of the material. In some cases, the material might be very difficult to use. I will give you an example. This is just to help us understand what we mean by difficult to use material. There was once an instance where one of our authors had carried letters from Nehru to his daughter Indira. Now, in this case, when we found out who holds the rights, we came to realize that it was the president of the Indian National Congress, the then president of the Indian National Congress, who held the rights to that particular book. And any communication with this person had to happen with the secretary to that position. And we were told in uncertain terms that they accept only check payments. Now, our organization does not make any check payments. All our payments are only online. So in that case, we had to go back and tell the authors, look, we have run into this difficulty because we might get questioned why we have paid a political party, and that too in check form, for use of content. So ideally, we would like to avoid this situation. So in that case, the authors were good enough to reconsider the inclusion of those letters, and they chose something else instead as a reading text. So there might be such red flags within the content where the publisher might run into a genuine problem. To give you another example, these days there's a lot of interest in TED Talks. And for the last 5-6 years, we've had a number of syllabi, including TED Talks, and specifying the actual talks to be included in the syllabus and consequently in the textbook. When we wrote to TED Talks in the year 2016, they wrote back to us saying, we are in an advanced stage of talks with another publishing house, where they are going to take whole and sole rights for all our TED Talks for their English learning language uh, content. So we would not like to commit to providing the content to any other publisher. So since then, we have not been able to carry any TED Talks or even a reference to the TED Talks in our books. Now, in 2021, once again, we had a similar request from another university. We thought, let us check. And when we wrote back to TED Talks again, they said, we have already signed an agreement with so-and-so publishing house, and all our content is only routed through them. So we are not giving any direct permission to carry either the links or the text of the talks or the talks themselves in audio or video form. So if we find this happens, then we red flag the university saying it might be there in your syllabus, but we will not be able to carry it within the textbook. You will have to manage it outside of the book. Another red flag is carrying links. Now, some people insist, why don't you carry a link? Now, the problem with carrying a YouTube link, say, in a book is that today when you are publishing the book, the link might be live. But tomorrow they might take down the link for some reason. Somebody might raise a red flag about it, and the link might be taken off. So then the publisher becomes held responsible, because the book might sell in the market. We even have cases of books selling for 9-10 years. A textbook might not, change for several years. So then we can't have, it's financially not viable for us to keep updating and revising the textbooks every year. So that is another reason why we do not carry any links in any of our books. Most standard reputed publishing houses have the same policy. Then we go back to the author with all the red flagging that we have done and seek revisions. In some cases, there's another possibility that copyright fee is very high, and it impacts the pricing of the book. And this particularly is happening now in the post-COVID season, because understandably, a lot of publishing houses have not had any sales for about 2.5 years. So this is one good source of money for them. So if the publishing house holds the rights or an author holds the rights, now they might ask for anything between, say, $80 to $100 to £10,000. That is the kind of range that we have. So we first figure out from our past experience how much a particular text is likely to cost, and based on that, we advise the author to reconsider some of the content. Now, to give another small example, a popular newspaper in South India about 5 years ago used to charge something between 5,000 and 6,000 rupees for an article of a few column inches, and slightly higher if it were longer. But then starting 2017, 2018, they have made it a flat rate of 20,000 per article, no matter what the length be. Even if you're carrying a 4-inch article, they will still charge you 20,000 plus 18% GST. So we end up paying 23,800 for every 23,600 for any article from that newspaper. So if an author is choosing to carry 2 or 3 such, it's fine. But if they want to carry half a dozen such, then you're already adding more than 1 lakh to your project budget. So that is the kind of red flagging that we do. And this is one of the reasons why we have also entered syllabus consultancy. So a whole lot of publishing houses are also doing this, where we get involved with the teachers right at the time of syllabus framing, so that we can help you figure out how you can keep your textbook content within the scope of your pricing. Because come what may, large state universities particularly do have severe pricing constraints, since our learners come from various socioeconomic backgrounds. And we, as a university publishing house, we are a non-profit organization. So whatever profit we make, it again fuels back into our products. So we also have an eye on affordability. So hence we advise universities to make sure that they keep the content manageable, so that their learners are not overstressed, particularly learners coming from rural areas and weak socioeconomic backgrounds. So how does this IP rights scene work? The first thing we do is, as I said, we list all the texts. Visuals can also be under copyright. So we list all of them along with the rights holders / agencies. Now, why agencies? Now, in the case of copyright, in some cases, if the author is alive, the author might retain the copyright. In some cases, if the author has not yet made a big name for himself when he published that book, the rights might still lie with the publisher who has first published his book. The third possibility is the author has passed away and there is an estate that manages his rights. Fourth possibility, the author has passed away, but his progeny, a son or a daughter, might hold the rights. Say, for instance, in the case of Saadat Hasan Manto, his grandson holds the rights now. In the case of R.K. Narayan, his daughter holds the rights. The case of Kushwant Singh, again, his daughter Maya Dalal holds the rights. So we have to figure out who holds the rights. And the last possibility is an agency. These days, increasingly, because publishing houses also don't have large teams to manage all the copyright requests that come from across the world, they are hiring agencies. There is an agency called CCC, the Copyright Clearance Center, who represent multiple publishing houses. So you have mostly an online platform where you go and fill in an online form with a request for so-and-so text, so-and-so extract from the text and so on. Give all your details. You give your print run. You give the number of years for which you need the rights. You mention whether it is just print rights or print and digital rights. Generally, the digital rights are more expensive than print. And in some cases, if we are sure that the content is never going to get digitized, then we also only seek print rights so that the book again can be kept affordable. And the rights are never given as perpetual rights. They are meant for 3 years or 5 years as the right holder may deem fit. And it is also for a specific market. I have to specify where the book is going to be selling, whether it is across India or in a particular region of India. So all these factors are put into the license that they generate and get us to sign. And then the payment is made. They are invoiced and payment is made. There is a longish application process. Sometimes it happens over email, and sometimes, as I said, where there are agencies involved, there are online forms to be filled. And in a whole lot of cases, there are also, especially if it is an agency, then there is a waiting period. And the minute you submit the form, you get a prompt saying there is an 8 to 12 week waiting period, or there's an 8 to 10 week waiting period. So there is nothing that you can do but to wait for that waiting period to end to be able to hear from them. If you are lucky, you will hear from them within that period. There are times when it just gets crossed and then you send a reminder and you get the license. So this is something I would like to underline here. Sometimes when universities are in a hurry to publish the book, they come to us and they say, by next month, we want the book. But if the copyright application process itself is 12 weeks long, then there is no way I'm going to be able to take the legal risk of publishing the book without having cleared the rights. There have been cases where publishing houses have been taken to court for not having cleared the rights before publishing the book. And we also have to provide evidence that we have acknowledged the source, we have paid the license fee at the time of going to press. And generally, they also expect us to send them a couple of copies of the printed book or a license of the digital material for them to keep track of whether we are following the license terms or not. So in licensing the content, the region where you're selling, the number of years, the sales volumes, because it's proportionate to the sales volumes, how many copies you're going to sell. Based on that, they quote the price. There is no hard and fast rule that this piece will cost this much. It depends on the volume of the book, the volumes of the book that you are going to be selling. If you're selling 5,000 copies, they will charge you a certain fee. If you're selling 45,000 copies, it is bound to be different. And whether it is for you use in print or digital, or print and digital. These are the possibilities. Then there's a whole rights clearance process that you have to close, have the countersigned license sent back to the rights owner before we go to press. It's only in extreme cases that we seek an exception and say the university is hard pressed for time, and hence we with the condition that we will clear the rights and pay the license fee, please allow us to go to press. It's up to them to give us the green signal. So this is something that I would like all of us who intend to publish to remember, that intellectual property rights need to be honored, and we expect authors to support publishing houses in fulfilling this duty. And as I already said earlier, there's an acknowledgement within the book that has to happen. Most cases, they give a standard credit line. In some cases where there's no credit line, we just form it. And Cambridge, as a policy, does not follow on-page credits. We do not give credit exactly on the page where the content is carried. We always park it in the acknowledgement page within the prelims of the book. Now comes the money jar, budgeting and pricing. Now, I've consciously included this because when we are working with universities and colleges, a lot of teachers do not have their eye on the importance of budgeting and pricing the book. The content and the pricing are linked in some way. This is something that doesn't occur to them. So we do a detailed project budgeting and seek internal approvals before we start any project. What contributes to the project budget are two main things: the pre-press costs and then the production costs. By production costs, I mean the cost of paper, the cost of the packaging, the cost of transport, dispatch, and so on. That is one part of it. The pre-press again is split into two parts: editorial and product development. Editorial costs would be what I pay my editors to be, even if they are in-house editors, there is a certain bandwidth that I'm investing within the product, and we calculate it based on the salary that each of these receives. There's an hourly calculation, and how many hours of this editorial's bandwidth, editorial resources bandwidth, one or two editors, will go into the product. That is costed. Then I might use freelance editors to do some of the proofing work. Then those costs. And then I also have the product development costs. The product development team basically deals with typesetting, page layouts, cover designing, audio and video creation, interactivity creation, digitizing of resources, and so on. And platform costs, if there are any platforms to be used to host the online content. So all that gets factored into the project budget. Then these are the production costs. As I said, this is the actual paper cost, and right now it's mayhem in the paper industry. You might have been reading in the newspapers as well. With the twin impacts of COVID, where paper had become very scarce, all manufacturing had stopped. So that was one impact that the industry was reeling under. The newsprint industry also is facing the same concern. Now with the Ukraine war, and a lot of paper and pulp and so on comes from Europe. So that's been a double impact for us. So at least in the newspaper industry, they have huge ad revenues. Now, I'm sure we must be noticing we have so many front pages now. Your newspaper, you can't figure out which is the actual front page. And then there are these full page ads that are getting published. That's only because they are trying to cover up for the huge newsprint cost. They are trying not to increase the cost of a newspaper so that the common man still finds them accessible. But they are absorbing the cost by going in for large advertisements. But then in the case of textbook publication, we don't have that choice. We as a rule do not carry any ads, even our own ads within our books. So we are having to absorb that within the pricing. So these are the production costs, paper costs, and then there are, of course, the uh, packaging costs, transport costs, and so on. Then royalty and discount percentage, we sell via book distributors. So there is a trade discount that is given to the distributors. And also the royalty that we pay to the authors, or the one-time fee, as the case may be, that gets into the pre-press cost. That goes as part of the editorial costs. Then, of course, since we are in the publishing business, there are some basic gross margins that the publishing house would want to have. So that also gets into the budgeting. And the sales projections will determine how healthy the P&Ls look. If it's a confident salesperson, then he will give us good projections across 3 years where the syllabus will be running, and then our gross margins seem healthy. But if that is not the case, the market is a little volatile, or there is piracy in the market, or there is the textbook buying behavior in that market is not very great. To give you an insight, a place like Kerala, the textbook buying behavior is so good that if we print 50,000 copies of a book, we might sell 48,000. That is how keen students in Kerala are on buying textbooks. The same textbook we publish for, say, a place in up north, then we might not even exhaust 20,000 copies. Though there are 50,000 students studying, only 20,000 of them might purchase a textbook. The others might manage even without a book, or buy some guide from the roadside and manage, or maybe photocopy a book and manage. So this textbook buying behavior also varies from region to region. Where the buying behavior is good, we are able to give really low pricing. In Kerala, we can afford to give low price textbooks because the buying behavior is good. The same pricing we might not be able to do in some other part of the country. Now, this is something, as teachers, it might not strike us. We might think, why is the publisher being so unfair, pricing it so high? But these are our challenges. And then we also figure out what are our distribution channels going to be, whether we are going to sell through trade, or some universities where the print runs are smaller, they buy back the whole quantity. They get us to print 5,000 copies, and the university buys the 5,000 copies. Then we have e-commerce. Now, some universities want the books to be put up on Amazon, so there is a slight cost involved there. So these are all factored into the budgeting and pricing documents. Then we, after factoring in all these, there's a little bit of back and forthing, and then we settle on a final pricing, and then we seek internal investment approvals. This whole process takes about a few weeks, about 3 to 4 weeks. So universities generally do not understand why is the publisher taking so much time to confirm whether they are going to publish our book or not. This is the reason. This slide, you have the reasons why it takes about 3 to 4 weeks for us to arrive at a place where we can say, yes, we are going ahead with this textbook. So that is the budget and pricing part of it. I hope this is not information overload. And I'm also very conscious that you have been listening for 6 days. Today is the 6th day of the workshop. So pardon me if you find this being a little too much to take.
No, ma'am. I think it's fine. Thank you.
Okay, good to hear that. Now comes the editing part of it. We have received the manuscript, we have gotten it reviewed, and now there is a rigorous editorial process. Now, the caricature there shows that even Socrates, poor thing, he was subject to editorial strictures. Just stick to the word count, I give you Socrates, is what this editor is telling him. So you will find our editors being equally strict about word counts and page counts and length of sentences. So at times, I'm sure the authors who we work with find that the editorial rigor at Cambridge is very high. And there are times when they put up their hands and say, After three rounds of revision, they say, no more, I'm tired of this. You do whatever you want with my manuscript. It's not my manuscript anymore, which is totally understandable because I've been on both sides of the fence. I can vouch for that. So what is copy editing? It's a key process in publishing. It is the stage where a raw manuscript turns into publishable form. And that process, the finesse with which it is done, will show in the quality of the final product. If the copy editing has been good, then the rest of the process becomes simpler. So what does the copy editor do? The copy editor literally judges the manuscript word by word, sentence by sentence, reads it, structures it, follows the logic. If he or she finds flaws in the logic, either goes back to the author for revision or fixes it himself or herself, and also creates headings, subheadings, and gives a logical flow to the content. Make sure that sentence length is controlled. Make sure that the language is not ambiguous. Make sure there are no spelling, grammatical errors, punctuation errors anywhere. And if it's done to the expected rigor, then in track change mode, the manuscript will show the number of interventions that have been made. And authors sometimes protest, saying that the or the editor has violated the manuscript. But please believe me, the more this kind of intervention, the better your end product is going to be when it comes out in book format. Then we also have something called a style sheet. All publishing houses have their own style guides. Sometimes for specific products, we might even create a specific style sheet. How are we going to carry the examples? Are they going to be carried in itals, or are they going to be carried with single quotes? What type casing is going to be done for the A-level subheadings, for the B-level subheadings, for the C-level subheadings? How are the table styles going to be? What kind of casing is going to happen in the table headings? Now, to a very minute level, we figure out the style that is to be carried. And this style, after the copy editing is done, the editor concerned, the lead editor, will mark the style. And there are times when authors kind of, don't understand why all my title casing has been changed to sentence casing. My suggestion here would be leave it to the publisher because they know their style best. And once you see the content in typeset form, then you begin to realize what is the advantage of leaving the style to the editors. You will see a consistent style. Then there might be illustrations. The authors might give us an illustration brief, or sometimes you just describe what you want, and then the editors will create the illustration briefs with dimensions and so on. And then if there is a storyboard to be created for a video, for instance, then you can just give the brief idea, and our internal editors or instructional designers will create the visual storyboards. Then if it's digital content, what are the question templates? Is it going to be MCQs alone, or is it going to be drag and drop? Is it going to be click and click? There are multiple options. Or text entry where you can fill up to a word or you fill up to a sentence. It again depends on the limitations of the platform we are using. So all these things are determined at this stage. Then we mark for the typesetter the different levels of subheads and so on. What is the font size to be used? What is the font style to be used? We use multiple fonts within some manuscripts. The main teaching might be in one font. The exercises might be carried in another font. So next time when you go back to a book, you can observe all these things, the minor little, things like font styles that give the book the aesthetic value that it brings. And if it's a single color book or a double color book or a 4-color book, now there's a cost attached to each. Most universities, large state universities, cannot afford 2-color or 4-color books. Hence, we go for single color. But where possible, for private universities, smaller setups, autonomous colleges, we do offer 2 and 4-color. It impacts the pricing a little. So we mark even those things, what color each of the subheads should be in the images and so on. We also have stock images. We generally use Getty's images where we have a large license. If you were to buy the images individually, it would cost about 22,000 each. But because we have a large global license, we get it for a much lower cost. Then we have planning and creation of the prelim pages. We might have, say, 6 to 8 pages or 10 pages of prelim pages, whether there's a foreword, whether there's a preface and a foreword, whether there's an introduction, the table of contents, the acknowledgements page, there's a title page, there's an imprints page with the copyright information, the ISBN, and so on. So all these are decided. Then if there are going to be any appendices, word lists, and so on, that is also planned at the copy editing stage. Once the whole manuscript is copy edited and approved by the authors over email, then only we proceed with typesetting. Typesetting is the process of arranging or composing text and getting it ready for printing. The more rigor we follow at the copy editing stage, the less rigor is needed post typesetting. So we first convey the scope of work to the typesetter. Now, at this stage, at the typesetting stage, from the editorial, the content goes to the product development team, which liaises with the typesetters. So we give them a scope of work, which is passed on to the typesetter, and the typesetter gives us quotations based on that. And then we determine to be able to get a quotation from the typesetter, we have to give them page layout, color, style, page size, font sizes, table styles, and so on. Based on that, based on the complexity of typesetting, they will offer us a quotation. We generally get 3 such quotations from the market and go for the lowest one, or sometimes not the lowest if the quality is a little suspect. We also seek some samples so that we go to the best person for the job. Now, a lot of authors I work with imagine that there is in-house typesetting. They want to make some last-minute change. They think a person sitting right next to me, is doing the typesetting. That is not how it works. We work with vendors who also have their set work timings and so on. So this is something authors should be keeping in mind, so that any change you want, you tell us well in time, because it is not happening at the publisher's end, it's happening at the vendor's end. Then we also decide insertion of images, illustrations. This is also factored into the costs by the typesetter. How many images, how many illustrations, and so on. Then if in the case of digital content, we finalize the visual storyboard. Then how the feedback is going to be given when a student enters the answer. Is there immediate answer, immediate feedback, right or wrong? Whether the right answer has to be reflected so that there is some remedial learning that's happening. Then how are we going to capture the results? Is there a grade book within the software which will capture the result of each and every exercise and give a report card? Is it complete analytics? This might not be the case in every LMS. It also depends on the pricing of the product, how much of analytics are included. Then we have we commission and get the audio and video recorded, and then we tag the audio and video resources to the book where the audio icon is going to be placed. If it's an ebook, for instance, either the audio and video is provided on a CD or a DVD. If it's in the case of books, these days, because most laptops don't even have CD drives, we are increasingly parking our audio and video assets on some platform, making them downloadable, carrying an access code within the book so that the students can go to that link, put in the access code and download the resources and save them on their computers. That is one big change that has come about in the last 3-4 years. And in other cases where you have ebooks, then we have to embed the audio and video. There are these icons that you find in ebooks where you click on the audio icon and the audio plays, you click on a video icon and the video plays. There are also PDFs that can be embedded into pages. If you want some extra information being given to the students, you can even embed PDFs into the pages of the ebook. Now, all this is part of the product development and typesetting stage. Then the visuals. Again, visuals, we go to some artists and vendors who create. There are even artist agencies. Artists are represented by agencies these days. You go to the agency and get the visuals, the audio and video commission, whether it's going to be a location shoot for the video, or is it going to be a video with slides in the background. Do you need a presenter on the screen? Do you not need a presenter on the screen? Do you need only a voiceover? So all these decisions are made, and then the vendors are commissioned. Then there is a review of the recorded samples, the complete editorial review. There's re-recording of portions where the video does not come out right. That we are very rigorous as Cambridge with the audio and video that we give out with our books. Then there's a tagging of the final files and hosting onto platforms or burning onto CDs. Mostly the CD option is being discouraged. Then comes the next stage. Now, often I find that authors are confused between copy editing and proofreading. I'd like to spend a minute or so on the difference. Copy editing always happens on a Word doc, on a raw manuscript. Proofreading always happens on a PDF in the post typeset stage. So proofing comes later, copy editing comes first. And the more rigorous the copy editing, the less rigor that is needed at the proofreading stage. So proofreading is always post typesetting. It's a post typesetting review of text and visuals. So proofreading is not just about text, but also about visuals, the white space. Even the white space has to be proofed. There can't be too much of white space on a page. The drops between paragraphs, the white space around an image, all those also come within the purview of the proofreader. The running heads on top, the footers at the bottom of the page, all these things. If the glossary has to be carried in the footers, the tagging of the gloss words to the main text. Now, all these are part of the proofreader's purview. So it's a thorough language, typographical and style check. Ideally, it should not be a language check if your copy editing has been thorough, but still there is scope for human error. So we might have to run a language check as well. Typographical and style check. Style stands out better when you look at a typeset page. So if something has to be in title case and it's gone into sentence case, it jumps out at you. It might not appear so easily on a Word doc page. In a typeset page, it just simply jumps out at you. And now we also cross-check, cross-reference with the style guide to see if we have followed style on everything. There are even strictures like when you're carrying numbers from 1 to 10, you carry them in words. Beyond 10, you carry them in digits. So all such things also matter. And we often have authors who get a little puzzled. Why are you making these changes? Why are you saying NINE instead of the number 9? So then we have to show that this is part of our house style. And proofreading is something that is done in multiple rounds, a minimum of 2 rounds with 2 different people. You can't have the same person doing both rounds of proofing because sometimes you tend to overlook the same error in multiple rounds. So we always have one person who's in-house doing 1 round of proofing, and then there's another person who's a freelance editor doing another round of proofing. And we always find issues in both. So 2 eyes look at whatever you have created, and the third eye is again the author's eye. After 2 rigorous rounds of proofing, we pass on the whole manuscript to the authors, who will also read the whole manuscript and approve it for us. So it's in-house and outsource, so that more than one eye has looked at the manuscript. So that ensures quality. And it's a very rigorous exercise. This is the difference you will find between a multinational publisher like ours and a local publisher. Then comes the creative part of the business. This is something that I enjoy the most in publishing, the commissioning of cover design. And these days you have some professionally trained people who have done courses in design There are a number of design courses that universities are offering these days. So you have wonderfully talented people who give you beautiful covers. And in the case of textbooks, we try and see if we can draw upon, say, the region. Say, for one of the books that we did for Assam recently, we carried the most famous orchid flower, which is the state flower in Assam. We carried a picture of that on the cover. In one case, we carried the weave on a sari border that is typical to Assam on the cover. So or if we are doing a book for Maharashtra, in one case we carried Varli art, tribal art, for on the cover. So that is the kind of possibilities that we have. It can be a typographical cover, it can be image based, it can be illustration based. So there are various possibilities here. We generally give our clients 2 to 3 cover design options. You pick one and then we refine it. So you shortlist and you tell us which one you like. We refine that cover, and then we go ahead and carry the author bios on the back cover. We write a blurb and get it approved by the authors. The blurb conveys a gist of the book so that the teachers and learners know what the book is about, for which course it is, and which semesters and so on, and what is the focus of the course. Then we place in the ISBN barcode. And if there are scratch codes to be carried within the book, they are carried within the inside front cover, the pricing on the back cover, and so on. So all this is part of cover design. The cover is also sent to the authors at the end at 2 stages. First, to decide on the design options, and lastly, to give us a final go ahead for the printing. So both text and cover have to be signed off by the authors, by all the authors concerned, or collectively via a point of contact over email for us to be able to go to press. Then these days, we are also doing a lot of blended content, which has a print book, which is for classroom training, which might also include audio or video that can be displayed on smart boards within the classroom. Then we also have a lot of self-paced practice, SPP content, that the students can do at their own time. Increasingly, we are also going with a mobile-first approach, because in a lot of cases in rural areas, students do not have access to laptops and desktop computers. So we are trying to make content device agnostic so that they can access it even on a mobile phone. And since mostly it's Android phones that work in India, that are popular in India, we try to make the content compatible with Android. So we have the instructor-led training part of the blended product, and we have the self-learning part. Then audio, video, and downloadable PDFs are provided, a lot of worksheets, assessments, and so on, which are printables. And Cambridge is known for a number of teacher resources. So the teacher doesn't have to take pains to prepare for the class. There's generally our teachers' books are even larger than, bulkier than our student books. The student book might be 120 pages long. The teacher's book might be 260 pages long. So we have step-by-step, page-by-page instructions. Some of our teacher books are interleaved, where the one side you have a page from the student's book. On the other side, you have instructions on how to teach that particular page. So that is the kind of extensive teacher resourcing that we do. We also give other resources, extra information, extra practice, worksheets, and so on, some ideas for games in the classroom. All those things are included in the teacher pack. So you might have a student access and you might have a teacher access if you're talking about digital or blended content. And therefore, we have a student dashboard and a teacher dashboard, which might look different. The student might get a few resources less than the teacher does. And we have the analytics and the grade book. In very rare cases, in our more premium price products, we also have certification that gets generated at the end of a course. Then we also have serious quality checks of both print and digital components. Now, we increasingly have a culture sensitivity check, as we all know that we live in very sensitive times where people can take offense to the slightest of mentions of sensitive issues. So we have a thorough culture sensitivity check, and we also try to co-opt our authors into this and help them understand that we need to use gender sensitive language, race sensitive language, inclusive language. We need to be careful about the use of pronouns that we do. And depending on the region that we are publishing for, we publish for places like Maldives and Bangladesh and Nepal and so on. And in fact, Cambridge Global even sells in Middle Eastern countries. We sell in a lot of European countries. So we have to even change our approach depending on the country that we are publishing in. So in a particular region, something might be offensive. Some food item might be offensive. In yet another, an animal might be offensive. Or in a third country, some religious symbol might be offensive. So we have to keep track of which region the book is going to be used in, and make sure that we try and not step on any toes. This is easier said than done. Despite all our efforts, there are times when people do point out that, look, this is a little sensitive in our area. So we always work very closely with authors and help them understand that we need to function in an ethnically diverse world, and we need to take everybody's views into account. So this is something that most multinational publishing houses do very, very carefully. And yet we still see in the media a lot of reports where books have been banned or books have to be pulled out from the market. So our effort, we've never had to face that situation so far, and we continue to hope that it never does. And then we seek author approvals at various stages, as I have said. That also leads to the quality parameter. And authors also have the confidence that I am working with a publishing house where the quality of the end product is assured. And final sign-offs are taken for production from the authors concerned, from the university also, if there is a university agreement in place. So we do not go to press unless the university says it's happy with whatever they have seen. And then after all these sign-offs, while the book is getting printed, we also generate access codes and convey them to the production team so that they can place them within the books. Then comes our marketing team. Now these days, earlier for textbooks at least, there was no need for any marketing. But now increasingly we are facing a situation where even textbooks have to be marketed a little bit. So we might create marketing collaterals like a flyer, for instance, or start a social media campaign. Then we might seek author support for promotions. We might plan a book launch with the university where we invite teachers from the region and hold a day-long workshop for them, a walkthrough of the book and the product. And we work with our authors, because no better ambassador for a book than the author himself or herself. And our authors are also very cooperative in this way, and they also travel, to places to be able to promote their book. And then we also provide teacher workshops to get them started on how to use a book, particularly if the approach, the pedagogy of the book is slightly different. We in Cambridge believe in learn by doing. So we have a very task-based approach. The student cannot just read and manage. They have to do a lot. The books themselves are interactive in that nature. So some teachers need a walkthrough to be able to deal with the task-based approach if they have been used to a lecture-based approach. And then we also have platform walkthroughs, because the teacher has to be comfortable using the platform, especially for remote teaching. If the teacher knows her way around the platform, the dashboard, its features and so on, then the best use of the product happens. And we might also do emailers and social media campaigns to promote, to encourage the students to buy the books. Then once we do a book, it's not the end of the story. We might keep coming back to our authors every few years for newer editions, to make them more contemporary. These days, things go out of fashion very soon. You might have given the example of Elvis Presley in a 20 in a 1990s book, but now it has to be someone closer. You might have to carry Shakira in the book, or you might have to carry some latest pop star. So that kind of refreshing revision has to keep happening. We have to upgrade the digital content, particularly because platforms change. Now these days we have artificial intelligence coming in. We have just recently, Cambridge has recently launched IELTS intelligence, which is IELTS content with artificial intelligence inbuilt. So such upgrades have to continuously happen. Then we might want to add newer digital components to an existing book to give it a fresh feel and lift. Then ebook versions are constantly being created. And each time you do another version of the book, there is an ISBN, a new ISBN that is sought. And there are fresher, addenda or agreements to be signed with the authors for the newer editions. There might be enhanced versions of existing ebooks. We might want to embed more audio, more video, and so on. And of course, there are cultural adaptations. In some cases, if there is a global product and we get feedback from the market that it's culturally alien, talks about a holiday spot in Paris and some food item from Belgium, it doesn't make sense to our students. We want our country to be seen, our cultural ethos within the book. So we might do cultural adaptations of existing books. So these also might be opportunities that authors can take up, where we give you a global product and say you adapt it to the Indian situation. Or we might say we are doing a book specifically for Assam, and we are not familiar with Assamese food items and Assamese culture and so on. So help us adapt the book, and we pay you for the work done. We sign an agreement with you, and you help us adapt it, and we acknowledge you within the book. So we have adapted books like this for Sri Lanka and Maldives and Nepal and so on. That's also an interesting process. So with that, we come to the end of my part of the presentation. So basically, to wrap up, I would say that we have walked through the entire life cycle of a book, right from a blank Word doc page to a finished book with its digital components in place. Now, I hope through this whole process, I've been able to give you some insights from my experience as a publishing manager, as a commissioning editor before that, and so on. So I have tried to keep the presentation free of jargon and publishing terms. But if in case still there are a few things that are unclear, I will be very happy to answer any questions. So it's over to you now.
Thank you, ma'am. Again, I'm Dr. Kasturi Goswami from Department of Economics, Bahona College. Let me quickly wrap up the entire presentation, what ma'am has said. Indeed, ma'am, I'm very intrigued, and I just don't know how to wrap this up because this is too much of information for me to process right now. But ma'am has spoke from her experience, and whatever she has said was mostly related to her experiences, but I'm sure that it works across all major publication houses. So as we have seen in ma'am's presentation, these days post-COVID publishing has not been just about print alone, but it has extended to blended content. Ma'am has given us insights on both, and also the presence of the footprint of Cambridge University Press, which is increasing in all spheres of education, from school to university to government project and some corporate houses, which mainly focuses on increasing employability skills. Thank you for thank you, ma'am, for taking us through the process of textbook publication, which is not just a single-handed effort, but a collaborative effort from authors, reviewers, editors, and a whole lot of people working in the back end to bring a book to life. And ma'am has also highlighted the difference between a trade title and university prescription, and also how publication is non-linear in nature and involves editorial, product development team, vendors, etc. As for authors, how you can get involved, freelancing is one way you can associate ourselves with publishing, and it will help creating better content for the learners. Ma'am has walked us through the life cycle of a book, which starts from a blank MS document to a book is a very rigorous journey. Authoring opportunities are available, and the publishing houses may commission the independent authors or through university suggested authors or a combination of authors based on royalty, and or freelance content developers on one time or author's proposal, which is mostly market based, if it is aligned with the publishing plans of the publishing houses. She spoke about royalty, and also how it is royalty and one-time fee is different from each other. And she also spoke about the content of a manuscript, which should be originality, should have originality in nature, and what the publication houses of repute like Cambridge looks into. It has to be authentic. If we use something in an academic vertical, we acknowledge the sources and sign the licenses. Sample content contain the structure of the review done by the editorial board and blind peer review by the subject matter expert. And once everything is finalized, the length and the book of the book, the complexities, everything once it is determined, then we go for the budget approval. How we go, how the publishing houses go for the budget approval, and how the entire process is, done through some standard credit line in terms of copyright concerns, and manuscripts is checked for plagiarism. Ma'am also spoke about the IP rights, which is of utmost importance and needs to be honored to save any legal difficulties. She also spoke about the content, how the content and the pricing are linked, and major publishing houses do a project budgeting to set the price of the book, and is done by seeking internal investment approvals. Copy editing is the key, and there is a big difference between copy editing and proofreading. And proofreading is usually done post typesetting for review of language, typographical error, and style check. Cover design, which is very important, and both the text and the cover design has to be signed off by the authors for printing. Ma'am also highlighted how we need to function in an ethnically diverse world, which needs to be done with utmost care. Finally, ma'am has touched upon how upgrading is the key to attract more audience and buyers, so the publishing houses might come back for revisions and enhanced editions to the author. I hope, ma'am, I'm able to sum up your presentation well, because
Beautifully done.
too much of information for me to process. And I'm sorry my video somehow is not working in the past few days. But now, with all this overwhelming information, I would like to open the house for discussion. I have a few questions which I will reserve for the later half once the participants are done with. Participants, the house is now open for discussion. You can type it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand or open directly your microphones and ask questions. We have aspiring authors with us, maybe, so please go ahead. Anyone? Participants, would anyone like to ask any questions? All right. Ma'am, if I see that no one is has anything, so may I ask a few questions, being the organizer myself?
Sure, sure.
All right. So, ma'am, you talked about something about proofreading. I'll just start with this question.
Yeah.
Which is done, in-house, and also sometimes it is like outsourced to some freelancer. So in-house, I think the proofreaders will be, well equipped with how it is done. But if, let us say, I'm starting as a freelancer, in
Mhm.
terms of proofreading, what are the do's and don'ts I need to look into?
Sure, that's an interesting question. Now, the way we approach freelancers is we first put them through an editorial test. There's a rigorous 2.5 hour editorial test that the editor has to go through, which includes proofreading, copy editing, task creation, content review, and so on. And only after that, after we are satisfied that they have a keen editorial eye and looking at the strength, whether they show strength in copy editing or in proofreading, only then we create a vendor in their name and begin to give them freelance work. So that in part assures us that we are going to a person who's capable of taking up the work. Point one. Point two, we also provide them with feedback. We get them to proofread some sample pages, and then we give rigorous feedback to them to help them improve. And third and last point is we also share our in-house style guide with them, so that whether our in-house editor is doing the proofing or an external editor, since they are using the same style guide, there are no inconsistencies between the. And we also, a fourth thing that we generally tend to do as far as possible is we get the first round done by the external freelancer, and then the final round, the second round is done internally, so that if in case something is not really in keeping with our style, then our internal editor definitely gets to correct it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, ma'am. So if someone is willing to start now, then I think they have to go through a rigorous process.
Yes.
Okay. So, ma'am, my second question is regarding the copy editing. So you said something that the copy editor usually, checks everything and proceeds for a logical flow of the book. So if I am authoring a book, for example, uh, I might have a definite way of logically ordering the book. So maybe let us say I'm authoring a book for environmental economics, since I'm from economics background. So I will take into the syllabus designed by UGC and major universities. And right now we know in CBCS, it's all the same. So we are allowed to deviate a bit university to university, but major way it remains the same. But sometimes what I have in my teaching career, which is very short right now, what I have observed from my teaching is that the syllabus, it's not very extensive in nature. It just highlights major points, and then we have to, as teachers, we have to make a logical ordering and prepare for the classes and go. So when maybe I'm writing a book, I will try to follow that logical ordering. So if let us say the copy editor takes up a part which should come first to the end, will it defeat my purpose as an author in that entire process?
Yeah, I understand. So in this case, we generally do not simply carry out the change. We suggest the change to the author, and we help the author arrive at a decision where they determine whether the change is worth carrying out or not. And even if the copy editor has carried out the change, it is always and always done on track change mode. So there is a way of reversing it. If we do not agree, if the author does not agree with the change, you can always tag a comment saying, I do not agree with this. Please let us revert to the earlier sequencing. So it's always an understanding between the editor and the author. It's never that the copy editor overrules the author. So it's a discussion, and there is a lot of back and forthing that happens at the copy editing stage. So unit by unit, the copy editor will copy edit and keep sharing back the unit with the author with comments tagged. Wherever they have made any major change, they will always tag a comment explaining the logic why they have made the change. So if you do not agree, within the comment itself, you can go on reply mode and you can disagree with the copy editor. That is perfectly all right and well within your rights as an author.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm so sorry, but I have one more question.
Sure.
So yesterday we had a session regarding, the similarity index check, or what we popularly known as plagiarism. So yesterday when our resource person was presenting, he presented us with the UGC guidelines, which he usually follow for our theses and dissertations. But there was something, correct me if I am wrong, any one of you, there is nothing like where we can follow a particular guideline while writing a book. Is there any process which can, because even writing book involves some ethical issues. So there might be, like you spoke about something about plagiarizing and giving due credit to the previous authors. So
Yes.
is there anything like the UGC guidelines for, I'm sure it will differ from publishing house to publishing house. Is there anything which can guide us as a, upcoming author or a novice author to, get through the process?
In our case, though we don't have a set guideline, we have culture sensitivity guidelines, our ethics guidelines, which portions of which we can share with the authors when we begin to work on a manuscript, about how to make sure that sensitive content is handled within the manuscript. As far as the rights issue goes, the way we do it is, once you do a plagiarism check and things show up, if there are major, say, portions that have to be carried from sources, then we immediately approach the sources, we write to them, and we figure out the feasibility of carrying the content. Now, there are people who say that up to 2 sentences is fine. There are publishing houses which will tell you up to 40 words is fine. Some publishing house will say up to 30 words is fine. The 31st word will get you into trouble. There is absolutely nothing like that. These are not absolute terms. You might carry a paragraph from somewhere, but it's always a good practice to write to whoever holds the rights and check with them. Is it okay? This is, you can attach the text on a Word doc and ask, is it okay for me to carry this in my book? And will there be a payment involved? In most cases, if the extract is very small and insignificant, they are nice enough to say that you have our permission, please go ahead, but acknowledge the source in so and so way. And they give you some kind of a credit line. That's all there is to it. If it is extensive, then they say there will be a fee attached. This is the amount. And we also sometimes get to negotiate over the amount. It's not like it's absolute. We negotiate over the amount. We say this is for students who come from a socially disadvantaged background, and the pricing is a constraint. So please reconsider the quotation. And I have seen cases where they have considerably reconsidered the initial quotation that they have given. In fact, some authors are nice enough to even say, I will waive my fee. If they are individuals and they have the authority, they simply waive the fee and say, please go ahead and quote it, just acknowledge me. So we will have to take it on a case-to-case basis. But from an author's point of view, if you're ever in doubt, all you have to do is put something on Google. You take a part of the text and put it on Google, it will show you the source. And if it is a source like Wikipedia, for instance, which is crowdsourced, then definitely it's a no-no. If you want to pick the idea and reword it, that is fine, but not in the exact same words that Wikipedia uses. So there are no hard and fast rules or guidelines that we can give. But we can, once we are working together, then we can guide you through it.
Okay, ma'am. And that answers a lot of things. And I never knew so much of work is involved in the back end while publishing a book. It has been such an enlightening session. And if participants have no questions, I would like to wrap up the session today. Okay, Ruplekha Devi has raised her hand. Would you like to ask a question, Ruplekha ma'am? Please go ahead. Yes. Yes, Ruplekha ma'am. I think your voice is breaking, ma'am. Can you type it in the chat box? Ruplekha ma'am, please type it in the chat box. We will take up the question. Ruplika ma'am. I guess it was an anomaly. All right. If no one has any question, I would like to wrap up today's session. Thank you, Alankrita ma'am, for being with us today. I'm sorry again about my video. Oh, Ruplika ma'am, yes, please type it. She has a question, I guess.
You can even email me questions later, ma'am, if you have any that people write it.
Okay.
Please feel
All
free
right.
to email them to me.
All right, ma'am, sure. So, as an organizer, I would like to thank Alankrita Mahendra ma'am for being here with us today and eloquently delivering all the keys and the do's and don'ts on publication. I'm myself as an organizer overwhelmed with the amount of information I had today. I had no idea so much goes into a book publication. Thank you, ma'am, for taking us through the entire process of publishing a book. I hope, ma'am, we will be in touch and keep collaborating in future. And with this, I would like to announce the session code for today. It is Bhutan. I repeat, it is Bhutan, Bhutan. And to the participants, we will meet back for the second session at 12:30. Please join 10 minutes ahead of time so that we can begin the session on time. Thank you for joining us today. Ma'am, it's a pleasure having you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I hope to have more such interactions. Always a pleasure to be interacting with teachers. Have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
nice rest of day.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, ma'am.